foreign and not so foreign lands they served.
That's the airplane that's hanging over my wings there.
Served a country they loved.
I look back on those years as probably some of the most rewarding years.
Their symptoms developed slowly.
I went to shoot, I couldn't pull the trigger. So I'm like, there's something going on.
Methodically.
He would just fall out of the blue.
A mystery until it wasn't.
I squatted down and I couldn't get up, and I just collapsed.
I've come to grips with it. It's not easy.
For months, a team of reporters in cities across the country listened, recorded, and documented.
I see a good-looking guy right here.
A story, not just of their fight against a rare disease,
God wish this on anybody,
but of their fight to have the U.S. government recognize the role played by their service.
A lot of exposures to degreasers and jet fuel.
We need the VA to see what this disease is and what it's done to the veterans.
Years of denials.
He told me exactly what would happen. He says, we'll file this claim. It's going to be denied.
And emails unreturned.
Not one response.
Now a renewed effort.
They've been fighting for years to get somebody to listen to them. Is that something that you are going to do?
To finally acknowledge a diagnosis denied.
This is a picture from a long time ago. Let me see where Greg is. Right here.
For 21 years, Greg Rathburn served his country.
Back in that active duty time.
The photos remember what his body has forgotten.
look at me, live my life for a day. God wish this on anybody.
The 62-year-old suffers from a rare muscle disease called inclusion body myositis, or IBM, a disease that takes and never stops.
Now he's not even strong enough to breathe on his own. He has no muscle that can move his arms or legs or anything.
His wife Lori does what Greg no longer can.
So we need to scoot him back several times a day.
Thanks.
Greg spent his career in the Air Force and later the Air National Guard.
Top gun right here, see? Okay, now I think Greg's at the top. Yeah, Greg's right here.
Working on some of the most advanced aircraft ever built. Then, in 2008, something changed. He felt weak and shaky.
He would feel like if a person felt if they were on a motorcycle and had been riding a motorcycle all day, just kind of vibrating, like a vibrating sensation.
At age 44, doctors diagnosed him with IBM.
So we kind of thought, yeah, it's a muscle wasting disease, but we'll get by, it's fine.
IBM breaks down muscle tissue over time, slowly robbing people of their strength until they can no longer function on their own. What causes it is a mystery. There is no cure.
It starts off with weakness in the hands, especially in the grip, and weakness in the upper legs.
Dr. Thomas Lloyd, chair of neurology at Baylor College of Medicine, says IBM often doesn't show up until years after service, sometimes decades later.
So it's extremely slowly progressive, and that leads to a delay in diagnosis.
Greg applied for service-connected disability in 2009, hoping for full benefits from the Veterans Administration. But the VA said no.
I fully, wholeheartedly believe that his exposures during the military service is what caused this disease.
There's no family history, no genetic markers. Greg and his wife were left wondering, looking back at the years he spent as an avionics technician, the harsh chemicals that came with the job, and his work on the SR-71 Blackbird, an aircraft notorious for leaking jet fuel. Whether that exposure triggered IBM is a question researchers are still trying to answer.
But, there was no training as far as the realization that these things can hurt you. Just wasn't talked about.
6 years later, Greg tried again, this time with a letter of support from a neurologist. The VA's answer was in black and white, once again denied, because the condition neither occurred in nor was caused by service.
I had to put my effort and he had to put his effort into his care. and just getting through each day. And we just couldn't put the effort into it anymore, so we gave up.
There was a bigger battle in front of them, the financial reality. Service-connected benefits would have meant more support from the VA, help with medical equipment, travel, and the cost of modifying their home.
If he was 100% service connected, I don't know how much it is, but I know that they will help with a lot more modifications and things. So we paid out of pocket for all of this.
Lori has put her life on hold. She retired early to take care of Greg. It's a job that doesn't know hours or days off.
Just scratch my ear.
This one.
Oh, thank you.
Little things like that all day long. Scratch this, move my arm.
For 21 years, Greg Rathburn served his country. The disease has taken almost everything. And what's happening to Greg is showing up in veterans across the country.
Angela. All right, you want to get me up?
You ready?
Yep. Born ready. Beam me up, Scotty.
Dennis McKinney's mornings now look like this.
It just started to get worse and worse and worse. So, and now it's beyond. I have an aide dress me, put me on the toilet, shower me. And if you don't think that's embarrassing, you know, it is.
At 82 years old, this Army veteran,
I was in Germany then.
like Greg,
So we need to scoot him back several times a day.
relies on others for nearly everything.
We gotta go that way.
Depending on the study and how you do the math, advocates believe the number of veterans diagnosed with IBM may be anywhere from 6 to 19 times higher than the general population. That's a wide range. The problem, nobody formally tracks IBM diagnoses.
How many of you guys are veterans that have been diagnosed with IBM?
Yes.
At this monthly meeting, veterans from across the country share more than just the same diagnosis.
How many that have been diagnosed with IBM have been denied disability benefits from the VA?
At one time or another, yeah, we all have.
Among them,
Good morning, everyone.
Dan Lother's wife, Alicia.
He was in the service for 4 years. I think back to 2017, which is 9 years ago, and when Dan was diagnosed, and he was walking. He was walking slowly and with the use of a cane, but he was walking then. August of this past year, he could no longer stand at all. This will rotate him side to side continuously.
Dan is too sick to speak with us.
It's ALS in slow motion is what it is.
Dr. Lloyd says IBM and ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, are very similar.
This molecular change that we see in the muscle in IBM is exactly the same molecular change that's seen in ALS.
But despite the severity of the disease, veterans say they are hitting a wall.
I was denied.
That's because the VA does not recognize IBM as a service-connected condition. There's no specific diagnostic code. Why does that matter? Because without it, there's no disability benefits questionnaire, and that means veterans are evaluated off other illnesses.
That's the airplane that's hanging over my wings there.
For retired Navy pilot William DeAugustinis, it was arthritis.
I was there for over 3 hours. She went through this whole exam for arthritis.
And none of it really related to your needs.
Not at all.
Others say their disability has been based off things like fibromyalgia and, yes, even ALS.
And the neurologist would mark no. And he noted at the front that Dan has inclusion body myositis, but because of the wording attributable to ALS, everything was marked no.
The fix veterans believe is simple. So do attorneys fighting on their behalf.
If VA simply recognizes the disease, finds ways to get it rated and evaluated correctly, and looks seriously at adding as a presumptive just like ALS, we don't have to wait any longer. It's a simple policy fix.
Until that happens,
I'm gonna go that way now.
those who fought for our country are left fighting a system that doesn't believe it caused the disease in their own bodies.
Can't we get a fix for this so that the younger guys are not gonna have to suffer through this?
In one of the most western parts of western Colorado, a town reawakens daily, each time re-inspiring the awe of at least one.
We recognize how lucky we really are.
At least one of its 13,000 residents.
We love the location.
And yet luck seldom feels more fickle.
I can only imagine how tremendous it is for able-bodied people.
Than it does right now.
29 individual disabilities.
Many years into a diagnosis that's slowly taken away the ability to enjoy what this part of the state has to offer.
There's optimism, there's pessimism, and then there's realism. And I am a realist.
Jim Cressman's candor is the result of a disease he knows will almost certainly take his life.
I can't get up and walk across the room anymore. I can't take 2 steps without falling.
If the national fight to have IBM recognized has a leader, it's Jim, a Vietnam veteran who serviced planes in Thailand for the U.S. Air Force.
Even today, I look back on those years as probably some of the most rewarding years of my life.
From his modified home,
there are no steps.
His weakened body has authored letter after letter, each asking for help in getting the Veterans Benefits Administration to establish a presumptive link between IBM and military service.
I have called state representatives here, senators. I have helped other veterans send letters to their senators and representatives. The only conclusion that I can come up with is they have made a choice, and that choice is they have chosen not to help the veterans.
And yet he believes it's still a story he's meant to tell. He first applied for benefits due to IBM in 2015. I was exposed to Agent Orange, he wrote. Agent Orange may be linked to the disease.
It was denied almost immediately.
Every single veteran that comes through at the initial level get denied, and that means all of them have to fight this case on appeal.
It was attorney Kerry Baker who took on Cressman's claim. Baker says a big problem with IBM is that so few know it exists.
You know, I run into VA employees probably every week about these cases. They've never heard of this disease.
Yet the VA's own records indicate, while rare, more than 2,000 veterans have it.
And right now it looks like, without a doubt, that military service plays a role in these veterans getting this disease.
Baker says he's now winning cases, securing successful appeals, but it's taking time.
And forgive me, I have trouble picking these things up because my fingers don't work.
Time many of those with IBM simply do not have.
We know that there's no cure, there is no treatment for this disease. It is progressive. We understand this.
9 years after Jim Cressman asked, he finally won full benefits, as bittersweet a victory as this veteran has ever received.
I will give you every penny if I could have my legs back. I just can't do those things any longer, and you have to accept it. That's what this disease does to you.
Terry Baker, good morning to you, sir.
It's why Jim is now their voice. Often you'll find him leading calls with other veterans who also have IBM, talking strategy. When he writes letters these days trying to raise awareness, he makes sure to include many of their signatures. He'll also include the studies and the letters from doctors showing a likely link between environmental exposures received during active military service and IBM.
Why have you chosen not to help them? And I don't get a response.
He has grown used.
Not one response. Not one response.
Used to being ignored by leaders, by legislators. He's tired, but not yet deterred.
It has been a passion of mine now for many, many years. I promised this group of veterans that I'm not going to stop. As I explained, I've got my disability benefits. I have my service connection. But I had to wait 9 years, finally had to hire an attorney to prove my case.
From his home in Fruita, Colorado, one of the leaders of this movement says it's time for their luck to change.
What does it take? What does it take to get the attention, to get a response from a letter that we've asked repeatedly for help for years and years and years to the same people, and nothing has been done?
For this interview, William Augie DeAugustinis didn't need to pull up a chair. He was already in one.
I quickly started having problems with my legs, just a straight line progression to a life in a wheelchair.
But as you've seen, it isn't a straight line to disability benefits. For Augie, the process took 11 years. He says, like ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, it should have been automatic.
My flying buddy in the Navy that I was on active duty with up in Iceland came down with ALS. And I was with him through that whole process. They provided him with everything he needed.
Same military service, same exposures.
Our offices were inside of a hangar, a lot of exposures to solvents and degreasers and jet fuel. And sometimes I went on a 10-hour mission with my sleeve soaked in de-icing fluid.
But different diagnosis. A diagnosis that can make a big difference in benefits.
This molecular change that we see in the muscle in IBM is exactly the same molecular change that's seen in ALS. I feel strongly that our patients with IBM who are veterans really deserve those same benefits as ALS patients.
Dr. Thomas Lloyd told the VA that directly, writing this letter to the appeals board in 2022 as several veterans, including Augie, fought for benefits. UNC's Department of Neurology did the same.
Complex diseases like IBM and ALS clearly have an environmental trigger.
While researchers are still looking at how those toxins might be connected, the veterans law judge that finally approved Augie's claim believed that medical testimony, writing electromagnetic and solar radiation along with de-icing toxins could be a risk factor.
We have seen at least 2 IBM cases get approved on initial submission. That is a very hopeful sign for us. But the process definitely needs to be streamlined.
The VA says it made ALS presumptive service-connected because veterans were 1.5 times more likely to develop ALS than the general population. By that standard, Carrie Baker, who works at the law firm that helped Augie defend his case, says IBM should be treated the same.
These numbers blow it out of the water.
Baker is again referring to studies that show the rate of veterans diagnosed with IBM may be at least 6 times higher. Whatever led to their illness, those living with IBM say they need the VA's help to manage the disease.
My hands don't work all that well anymore.
From wheelchairs,
this one they're going to do 36 inches,
widened walkways, to toilets, and even special lifts. Augie believes giving IBM a diagnostic code, creating a disability benefits questionnaire to properly assess veterans, and making the condition presumptive will spark more research, perhaps leading one day to a cure.
I've come to grips with it. It's not easy.
But getting benefits for IBM through the VA, he says, should be.
We had plans for when I retired, and this wasn't part of it. I actually like to go through these pictures quite often.
Larry Lesher.
What a trip it's been.
Never imagined.
It has been a real trip.
Retirement would become a two-front battle.
It brings back good memories as well as some difficult times that I've had.
Not only against a rare debilitating disease known as IBM.
Pictures of when I was in the service.
But for recognition from the VA that it's service-related.
I was 58. Probably when I realized that there was something wrong. We need the VA to see exactly what this disease is and what it's done to the veterans.
Now 82.
I don't want to dwell on things that I no longer can do.
This Air Force veteran who served as a military cryptologist says he was trained to dispose of classified materials using chemical-based incendiary devices, something he now believes may be connected to his illness.
I absolutely believe it was service-connected. Absolutely.
It took him nearly 20 years to get the VA to come to that same conclusion.
I can't even tell you the hours that he put in. I'm not kidding you, I would have given up way, way long ago because the VA it's like delay, delay, delay.
A fight that depleted much of their life savings retrofitting their house as his health declined.
I didn't want anybody else to have to go through what it took me 17 and a half years.
And those benefits are a game changer. I mean, we have so many things from the VA we couldn't possibly have afforded. So they provide a lot of benefit if you can get it as presumptive.
That is why Larry is still in this fight, so other veterans who have selflessly served our country do not have to wait years for help they so desperately need.
Our goal, there's 5 of us that are really pushing to get the VA to understand that it should be a presumptive disease.
We took veterans' concerns and stories
The younger guys are not going to have to suffer through this.
to lawmakers who are now vowing to take action.
I guarantee if I can't get it done in like the next 5 months, then we're really just not in good shape. But I think that we'll be able to get something done.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, a veteran herself, says the system needs to change.
The VA system and the way that their ratings are designed, it is to force denial, and then you have to, again, fight for it, and that's not how it's supposed to be operating.
Right after we interviewed her, she called the White House Congressional liaison.
So I think what it's actually going to take is actually getting a meeting with the new VA secretary and then also flagging it for the president. And I think once that happens, I think it'll be an automatic thing, because if we can't get it done through Congress, we'll just ask the president to do it via executive order. And I think that this would be something that he'd be inclined to do.
Congressman Gus Bilirakis, co-chair of the Rare Disease Caucus, says he was not aware of IBM.
You brought it to our attention, and I appreciate that very much.
But now says he's committed to pushing for answers and potential presumptive status.
Veterans are my top priority. I think we can get it done.
We uncovered an internal presentation created in February to answer questions we kept asking lawmakers about the VA's response to IBM. The National Institutes of Health is looking at possible links between toxic exposures and military service. The VA report acknowledges it has contracted with the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine to review certain neurodegenerative diseases, including IBM, and their potential relationship to military environmental exposures.
Have an prescribed way of going about the study in a rare disease and the association with the military. But
Representative Rich McCormick acknowledges that study isn't expected to be completed until July 2027. After we pressed for answers, McCormick, a Marine veteran, says he personally spoke with Secretary Doug Collins about the VA's efforts to better understand IBM. And while the wait continues, McCormick believes the disease will ultimately be recognized as service-connected.
In the meantime, of course, they're looking at each case. They're trying to accelerate those cases.
We've asked the VA for the data to see how many veterans have had their cases approved without having to go through a lengthy appeals process. They have yet to provide it.
Lifts me out of the wheelchair. It carries me into the bathroom.
Larry, who is grateful for the benefits he now receives through the VA, is committed to seeing this fight to the end to make sure every veteran who comes after him and those still fighting denied claims can get the same life-changing support he finally did.
We signed on the dotted line. We gave our country everything we had to give them. It's time that they look at what they've done, what they have, and come back to us and help us.